Hello. In this video I'm going to give you a bit of an update on my live case situation. Having just played 2 shows at the excellent Synth East in Norwich, that was a show sharing the stage with the awesome Steve Davis, and also an improv show with Gaz Williams and Robin Vincent, who organised the event. And it galvanised me to sort of make changes that I wanted to the case. And I've been recording some music with this case too, and I thought, for better or worse, why don't I talk about it? And you can see and take from this what you find inspiring and ignore what you think is not relevant or doesn't have staying power. I think it's really important to state that I have not road tested this case by playing by myself for hours and 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 hours. It's really way too soon to say. I guess what I'm saying is, I don't know if it's good or not. So take from it what you will. So in terms of the amount of available voices I have, I've got 2 kind of flexible synth voices in here. And I've got a noisy source in the sense that I have a kind of radio music with samples in it. And I can bring that in and out, and it has its own effects. And then I've got 2 sample units. Excuse me, go away. 2 sample units, the tip-top ones, which have rave stabs in them. And then the other one, absolutely delightful. And let me tell you, when you wang those through C legs, it's good. And so you can see for effects, I have the IntelliGel C legs, and I'm doing a kind of modular mixer thing. That is to say that I am using constituent parts to mix together everything and create sends. And in terms of pitch sequencing, I have the Turing machine and the Laddick 4-step sequencer, the S143, being precision added and then quantized by the Ornament and Crimes calibrator firmware. And then I have 2 Euclidean circles for the rhythms, and I want 2 because I want to have as much on the front panel as I possibly can. And then for modulation sequencing, I've got the Oct and the Run step, with the DivKid mutes, bit of a DivKid cluster here, to send those into the braids and the Rovid digital modules. And then a PAMS to clock it. And then over here on the right, mixers to mix everything. And then with C-legs, I'm getting sounds into the effects by, the way you do that in a modular way is that you mult the signal. So you send the dry copy of the Atlantis. The dry signal goes to a mixer, so that if this is running, that's the dry signal, but it's being multed to this mixer here, and that mixer goes into the C-legs, and the C-legs is fully wet, so that when I do that, it feeds it into C-legs wet, and then that wet signal is summed together into here, into the mixer, and goes out to house. So I've made a send by multing my signals to the mixer, and then I just create a fully wet version in here. And I've tried lots of different reverbs and delays like the Mimeophone and others, and I love them all for different reasons. And the reason I settled on C-legs just in this particular instance, it's just really jammable and it's super vibey. Super, super, super vibey. And I kind of like that for the dubby, with these rave stabs. It's just doing it for me. I think it sounds nice. Yeah. Right. Let's talk about sequencing. And this is a very traditional thing for me at this stage, which is to say, we have a couple of sequencer sources. We're compounding them in a precision adder, and then we're quantizing them, and we're sending them off to the various places to be heard. So, with everything zeroed on the precision adder, which is a module that adds or subtracts voltages from one another, then this should be making C3. And I know that because I actually took the trouble to tune this thing. So on the Ornament and Crime, I'm using the Phaserville firmware, and I'm using the Calibrator app in Phaserville. And this was invented by Chris Meyer of Learning Modular, who commissioned it. And in short, it's a quantizer. But what's really nice is that it has the ability to scale the outputs so that you can ensure that disparate oscillators made by different manufacturers all harmoniously are in tune across a broad range of musical notes. So in this way, I have 4 oscillators in this system: the Atlantis, the Braids, the Titan, and the Rovid. All of them individually are being quantized, and each of them has been trimmed in Calibrator by myself manually. And this means that the oscillators should all be in tune with each other when I fade them up. And the other thing that you can do with this is that you can feed gates into the trigger inputs of each channel, which is what I'm doing. And we do this so that whenever a gate is fed into Atlantis, it is also triggering the sustain of the note that is pitching it. So if I turn this on, what I did just then was I flicked this to the right and I've sent the Turing machine into the precision adder. That then goes into the calibrator. That is then gated at the same time that this is gated. And the thing that is actually gating it is this second channel of Euclidean circles. And this first channel influences the second channel to tell it when to advance. It only advances whenever there's a step here. And this gives you just slightly more interesting Euclidean step-like results. If I cycle this and change the length. Because if we have this on full, you get a very predictable thing, which could be good. That might be what you want. But I like this mode where channel 1 influences whether channel 2 advances. You can also use it to kind of slow down the thing. So if we throw that into the... See what I mean? The reason I'm kind of keen on this is the fact that I don't mean to rag on Euclidean rhythm generators in general, but there is a certain sort of rhythm that they have. There's a certain cadence, there's a certain vibe to a Euclidean rhythm that after a certain amount of time, it gets a bit boring. Because it's equally distributing the notes across the little scale, it's all just a bit samey and repetitive. And anything you can do to sort of stop and break it up, I think is good. The reason there's a A151 here is because I'm also thinking about potentially using an A151 to sort of shave the sequence, to like mute the sequence part way through the steps. Do you see what I mean? You could also use like a VCA, put like the gate stream in a VCA, and then use some kind of sequencer, some kind of gate module that goes on and off to chop up the gate streams that Euclidean circles or whatever you might have is making. And so make it so that it's not firing notes all the time, but perhaps it fires notes at the end of 4 bars or halfway through the bar for a little bit. I'm doing this just to try and make it less monotonous, repetitive, and a bit more interesting just right from the get-go. Anything that you can do to just add an enrichment and interest so that you have less to do is a good thing. And this is why I have these modulation things up here, which my aim with these is to, ideally, I would be subtly modulating almost every parameter in this synth. Like, I would love to have just like little like modulations going on everything. In fact, I do have something rooted into the mod, which is a channel on PAMs. I'm fairly sure I do. At least it was my intention to do so. In fact, it's here, and I'm not even sure if it's working properly. But there is one going into the decay here. Let me show you that instead. That's probably a better example. Like that. So by which I mean, I have an offsetted, sort of pushed up kind of random voltage being created by PAMs, and I'm using it I'm sending it into the decay of the pip slope, and I'm doing that to try and vary the pip slope's decay parameter very slightly on a per step basis. Can you hear that it is actually slightly different? It's really subtle. Hear it? That's without. Hear it? It went quite short there for a second. So, if there was any lesson that I want to convey, because it's something that I'm trying to internalize, it's that. It's very subtle modulation makes a hell of a lot of difference. And so if you could subtly animate the openness of the filter on a per step basis, or just the slightest, then you should. And PAMS is really good for doing this, because you can go into here, you can apply offsets to push up the voltage so that mostly it's open and it only operates within a certain sort of window. Does that make sense? That's what I needed to do here for this to work. Anyway, modulate. You can never have too many VCAs. And so, yeah, in terms of sequencing, I'm using Euclidean circles to fire off my Atlantis-y voice. And we know that we're quantizing it and we're gating it. The quantizer is being gated at the same time. This third channel here, what even is that? That's not actually connected to anything. Wow, how decadent. Nothing there. Anyway, moving on. This other one is controlling the two rave stabs, and this top one is controlling the braids voice. Nice to have things at very different time bases like this. But yes, the top one's controlling this, and this one is controlling the Atlantis. And then these are the rave stabs. This bottom one's this right one. And then that's the send for the rave stabs, collective send for both of them. Got to accept some limitations here. Anyway, so that's kind of what's going on in Euclidean circles, which isn't to say it's very special. You've got mutes on this one here, which is nice. But my feeling, the important thing that I'm trying to do is put as much on the front panel as I can. It's irrelevant whether you use Euclidean circles or grids or anything else. For me, what is important is that it's just right under my fingertips, and it's really easy to create variations with. And I'm actually very undecided whether Euclidean circles or grids is the best way of doing this, because I really love the economy of grids. The fact that with grids, you turn it, you get more, you turn it left, you get less. That's true of the Euclidean circles as well. Euclidean circles has the added complexity that you can also push and offset and do clever things I can sort of, if I go here. So in this golden mode, you can add steps. The blue mode, you can change the length. And then in the pink mode, you can shift. But if you ask me, it's a lot to take in. It's a lot to do. To shift modes like this, to be changing the length, to sort of try and find a good riff just right then and there, to find a funky little pattern. God, which one do I do? Do I go less of this and then more of that? Do I like that? Does the downbeats bother me? Have I got the blue step length right? I don't mind that. Okay, is that fine? And what I'm sort of trying to hint at here is how much can you really do live? How much can you really do live? And that's something that I think about constantly, because there's many, like, you know, great sayings, and I don't know who said this, but you're much dumber on stage than you are at home. Like, if you're playing live and you're in front of 200 people, you're really careful not to break what's working about what you're playing, you know? And just a simple little thing as like changing one parameter on here can completely transform what you're hearing. And it's for better or worse. A constant truth is the fact that you can think you're being super clever with a patch or with a choice of a module or whatever it may be. And at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is how easily you get amazing results from it. And the easier it is to always get amazing results, then that's what you should do, no matter how dumb it is and no matter how, you know, no matter what it is. I suppose that also extends to having complex patches and doing all kinds of clever things. Will you be able to steer them live? Are they too complicated for you to remember what everything is doing and to have like positive influence? What if you break it and get it into a crap sounding state? Can you get it out of that crap sounding state really quickly? And I suppose what I'm not sort of having a go at Euclidean circles because it's a fantastic module and it was my choice to put it in. But what I mean is it's, you know, there's a lot of things to be like considering if you want to change things on a sixpence and be like, right, we've come to the end of 64 bars of this. How do I quickly like transform it? On grids, you would just go X and Y and suddenly, or even just X, and it will completely change the pattern. But grids is physically larger. Anyway, there are smaller grids. But yeah, I wanted to just share my thinking, basically. These are the things that are bothering me, the things that I think about, and as I think about what I put in. How easy is it? If it isn't insanely easy, then I probably shouldn't be using it. It will only bite me in the bum. Okay, so in terms of pitch sequencing, I have the precision adder, and I have two voltage sources feeding into it so that I can have them individual or I can sum them together and make a more complicated pitch sequence. And that same pitch sequence is being gated differently for the two voices, but they're both receiving the same information. It's something I've done before, and that's so that I only have one thing to mess with, one thing that changes both voices' pitches. It's simpler that way, and I can use the calibrator to shift the register and make the two voices here, the Titan and the braids, lower in pitch than this one. In fact, you can also do semitone shifts too. But the main point is how it works. So if I like fade up Atlantis, it should be making C3. And then if I introduce my friend the S143, so the S143 is being triggered by Pam's new workout to only shift every bar. And I'm doing this because it is remarkably hard to come up with a good riff improvised in front of an audience, as you can probably imagine, or as you know yourself. And having only 4 steps and just doing nice, dumb, traditional, pitch shifting sequences, they are really easy to manage. This is very feasible. And it's going into the top of the precision adder, which affords me an extra attenuator, so I can reduce the range that this is outputting and make it even easier to hit certain notes, because I can only move, when I'm moving these white dials, I'm actually only moving them over a small range, really. And because it's every 4 bars, you've got time to think and feel it out. Might go up here. I want to go up one more. I am finding it really successful. Like, I actually can hit the notes I want with this. And that's like the braids. And if I might want to have the braids lower in pitch, like that, I use calibrator to knock it down an octave. And now it's in the bass register. Oh yeah, that works. So yeah, these two voices, they share the same information, but they're being gated differently, and hopefully they respond sufficiently differently. But I can just do this. And that one dumb action results in a change that affects both of my voices. They sound harmonized, and they are, perhaps to a fault, because they really are linked together in that way. But if I have a less busy sequence, it should be less obvious. By having a more sparse gate on here and a busier one on here, it sounds like the bass is kind of like catching up. Like the bassist is listening to the, the Atlantis player. And then we've got a Turing machine. And so I can turn off the 143. And so what I did was just turn up the scale on the Turing machine. So this dial, which is acting as an attenuator to the 143, the same type of dial is on here, which is really nice. So I have attenuation for both of these sources and the ability to just click them, their existence, their contribution to the sequence on and off in a heartbeat. And then what we do here is we have them both compounded. So we're getting our nice like 4-bar shifts, and then we're also getting this twiddly little voltage coming out of the Turing machine. So it's like you're playing a little riff and you're moving up and down the keyboard, but because I'm quantizing afterwards, it's all in key as well. So I can sort of make more complicated or simplistic sequences. And you can have the kind of widdly-widdly-wee sort of thing where it doesn't really shift key or, shift up and down the keyboard. It's just the same noodly little riff. Reliably, it will play the same phrase. And then these two unconnected inputs, if I push them, will act as 1 volt offsets. So the octave shift switches with nothing connected. So I can drop 1 octave or 2. Drop the register of everything down 2 octaves. my general thought is that this voice tends to be more of a bass register voice. Really enjoying micro braids, that is, again, because I had a braids and I sold it, which was the dumbest thing that you could do, since they don't make them no more. It's a wicked bass voice. It's also, there's a lot to be said. I mean, I use Platts a great deal. This is the Rovid, which is like a version of Platts. And I have that going into the Atlantis. That's it there. And because it's on an external input, what's nice about the Atlantis is its ability to chameleonically like become a Rovid or just become a traditional synth, go up an octave or two, or a blend of the two. And you've got different modes that you can pick, like these sort of like string synth modes, which sound really different. Braids is fantastic for its ability to just also become something else. And my thinking here is that I've got the Titan and I've got this Beep Boop Electronics little like mixer. And why is that not shifting? Have I buggered that up? Something's wrong there. That should be shifting with the rest. In any case, the idea is that like on the Atlantis and the Rovid, you can like blend in the digital oscillator or the traditional analog one. But if I'm being frank, I think it's overkill. I think just a braids is enough. And then in terms of like modulation, I have the mutes. And if I flick on these two switches, that sends voltage into timbre and color. And I've got Oct doing like a slow LFO going into them, I believe. And that one, yeah, these ones. Slow LFOs. And I can put that into the C legs with this second. But the takeaway here is just having some modulation that will do interesting things just in reserve. So all I have to do is like flick the switch to like when I'm just like crap, something needs to happen, this needs to change, this is getting boring. I can flick the switches and it will slowly like morph the timbre and color knobs for me. Same here in this mod input on Atlantis. I've also got like a slow, it's actually a slow LFO from Oct. So it'll slowly open and close the filter for me. And because it's Atlantis, you've got multiple inputs and you can have the envelope, the 1 volt per octave, and that slow LFO contributing to the filter, which is again, all part of it just sounding more like animated and alive all the time, automatically, without me having to like furiously like animate the filter, which is just like not practical. Like you're trying to control way too much. And then this little like voice here is the radio music going through the Steve's MS-22 filter with an effects aid dedicated on the output. So you get those like lovely reverb tails. I've got it in like a reverb mode. And then what I'm doing is I'm using the Quadrat, the Intelligent one, as a DC offset, because I love you Steve's MS-22, but you have got tiny knobs. I cannot manually just run across and just go whoop whap like that and pull that in. But what you can do is you can map these big spacious knobs and use the DC offset, feed them in, so that one convenient and ergonomic knob controls this. Think of it as like a macro controller, you know? So you should afford yourself things like these switches here that will just make stuff happen. By the way, the bottom two are going into the Rovid to control, I think, harm and morph? No, harm and timbre. So those should be like changing as well. I think I've got the step sequence here from the micro step, or from the run step. Again, that step is being gated, the same as the Atlantis voice. So every time the Atlantis triggers a new voice, there should be a new voltage generated, which is what goes into the Rovid. And I've done it so that it's it means that every time the voice triggers you get a new voltage. It doesn't happen mid-step, and so it makes things hopefully sound more coherent. Jury's out on the coherent part. And so yeah, the idea is you can like dub in something there. And now I think I do have this second thing. Something is triggering the reset. It's 6 on here. Oldie but goodie. It's just sending a start, like a reset, sorry. A rhythmic reset is good. That's techno, I believe. That's what they call that. I do have a hat on this one somewhere. Hard to find. Because you might be saying, well, where's all your rhythms? How are you going to do drums? And actually, something I didn't talk about is the fact that I don't really intend to do drums in this case. I intend to try and use the Roland TR8, the best drum machine that Roland ever made, and use that to do my drums. And so I only have drums in here because I played these shows at Norwich and I kind of had to have some drums, because when I played with Steve, he didn't have any drums in his case, and I was like, we need a kick, you know, just to like give people something to nod to. Is there much more to say? 2 voices, modulation on tap for those voices, digital oscillators in those voices because they're flexible and interesting and satisfying. And I really like Braid's beefiness. I love plats, but there's a lot of modes in plats. Let me tell you, you won't necessarily find the best ones on stage unless you've scoped them out ahead of time and made notes. They all have different states they can be in. There's 3 controls for each. It can make a huge difference, whereas sometimes you just need simple. In fact, I'd make a strong case that most of the time you need simple. You will be dumb on stage. You will be many, many, many times more dumb than you already are. I'm speaking to myself here, by the way. That you must make things simple. You must make them so that you can make the changes that you want when you need to make them. So I'm not decided. Are Euclidean circles a bit more complicated than I'd like to mess with live? Perhaps I just need to increase my experience with them. Or perhaps I do still need a grids. Maybe. Is C legs too much? I don't know. It's big physically, but my goodness, it makes a big sound. And I'm enjoying it. And a number of people at the show say, my goodness, you just got this wonderful, gorgeous, huge, like enveloping sound to happen. I'm like, mate, that was putting rave stabs into a C-legs. Like that. need something to happen, don't we? Yeah, that's it. How dumb can you make it? How dumb can you make it? That's how dumb you should make it. The simpler I made it, the more complicated the music became. Blah blah. Although, I'm not sure. I'm trying to do a lot of things concurrently and live, whereas he's using loopers. And there's probably a lot to be said for that. And Lord knows, his system is road tested in a way that this is not. So it remains to be seen how well I can wield this. Don't make any assumptions that just because I'm like making a video on this, this is like it. Is it ever it? Also, a really quick thing about the rave stabs is I tune them all to be the same pitch, and I high pass them so that hopefully they sound good and reasonably harmonious with each other, so that you can pick any of them and hope that they all work. I'm enjoying it so far. Modulate your voices. Make it easy for yourself. You are dumb on stage. And at the end of the day, it has to be accessible. Thanks for watching. I have a Patreon. If you enjoy videos of this nature and others, and a podcast called Why We Bleep, please consider sponsoring on Patreon, and thank you so much to those of you who do. You are making this possible. Thank you for indulging my madness. Now. We need to play more with this, so I hope to be back with some jams soon. Thanks.